Israelis are victimizing above all the children. It is totally unacceptable that the Israelis should behave like this, but they don't care. They don't give a damn about their fellow human beings.
Are holding an entire people in the largest prison camp in the world in appalling conditions.
Make the Israeli government reappraise this barbaric and unproductive strategy.
The Israelis don't care about condemnation. They're self-righteous and complacent. These people cannot be persuaded. You cannot appeal to their better nature when they don't have a better nature. My grandmother was ill in bed when the Nazis came to her hometown of Stachov. A German soldier shot her dead in her bed. Madam Deputy Speaker, my grandmother did not die to provide cover for Israeli soldiers murdering Palestinian grandmothers in Gaza. The present Israeli government ruthlessly and cynically exploit the continuing guilt among Gentiles over the slaughter of Jews in the Holocaust as justification for their murder of Palestinians. The implication is that Jewish lives are precious, but the lives of Palestinians do not count. The spokeswoman for the Israeli army, Major Leibovich, was asked about the Israeli killing of, at that time, 800 Palestinians. The total is now 1,000. She replied instantly, 500 of them were militants. That was the reply of a Nazi. There's certainly no point in appealing to their better nature because they don't have a better nation. You've got to make them suffer, because that's the only way they will feel anything. And economic sanctions would erode this huge first world standard of living which they enjoy on borrowed money. It's time for our government to make clear to the Israeli government that its conduct and policies are unacceptable and to impose a total arms ban on Israel. It's worse even than the foul actions of the South African apartheid government with huge loss of life called Operation Cast Lead. A year afterwards, the smoke from the white phosphorus bombardment by Israel was still fuming away. Israel was born out of Jewish terrorism. Jewish terrorists hanged 2 British sergeants and booby-trapped their corpses. Irgun, together with the terrorist Stern Gang, massacred 254 Palestinians in 1948 in the village of Deir Yassin. For every Israeli killed by Palestinians, 100 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli troops. Often, and the UN has revealed this, deliberately firing at women and children and killing them. If any other country on earth was doing what the Israelis have been doing to 1.7 million Palestinians in Gaza, there will be United Nations resolutions, there will be calls for intervention, there will be sanctions, but the Israelis literally get away with murder. There will still be 1.5 million Palestinians in Gaza and 2.5 million more Palestinians in the West Bank who are treated like dirt by the Israelis.
Gerald Kaufman.
Will the Prime Minister condemn the new Israeli government bill which removes what are defined as national rights from all Israeli citizens who are not Jews, makes Hebrew the only national language, and has been denounced by the Israeli Attorney General as causing a deterioration in the democratic character of the state? Will he make clear that statutory repressive removal of citizenship rights on the basis of religion will turn Israel into an apartheid state?
What I'd say to the right honourable gentleman is this, that one of the reasons I'm such a strong supporter of Israel is that it is a country that has given rights and democracy to its people.
The Prime Minister, David Cameron, described the Gaza Strip as a prison camp. But it so happened that he said that when he was visiting a Muslim country, Turkey, and wanted to ingratiate himself with his hosts.
War about illegal settlements and stolen lands. And what is the next big political move? I have sat here these last 30 years and heard the same statement every year for 30 years, and nothing has happened.
Just last year, the UN predicted that potable water in Gaza would run out by 2016. The Palestinian officials are reporting that the Israelis are targeting water and sewage supplies. And already before this latest attack, the people of Gaza were spending 30 pence out of every pound on safe drinking water. How are we going to make sure that they can live while we carry on this argument?
Israeli aircraft have been targeting water wells, and if they have, that is a clear breach of international law.
Ethnic cleansing and apartheid are evil. Sadly, successive governments have supported a country where these vile actions are inflicted on the indigenous people. The Israeli government said it was to proceed with the forced evictions of 30,000 Bedouin Arabs from their historic lands. Is it not time we treated Israel as we did apartheid South Africa?
Gaza under siege and 60% of the West Bank now under direct military rule, and a seemingly complete failure to halt the continuing expansion of the Israeli settlements. These settlements are illegal in the West Bank.
The tragedy of the loss of life in the whole region surely stems ultimately from the occupation of the West Bank, the settlement policy and the siege of Gaza that's going on at the present time. What practical steps has he taken to criticise Israel for its collective punishment of the people of Gaza, destruction of water supplies and sewage plants, killing of large numbers of civilians? What sanctions does he now propose to take against Israel for acting against international law in punishing a civilian population?
Everybody, but particularly the young people and the children, are undernourished, which affects them so much that it will go on to future generations. They have hardly any fresh water, just for a few hours every 5 days, so they're diseased in that way. A great deal of the transport now is by horse or donkey. There's hardly any electrical power. Indeed, on a recent summer, because there wasn't enough electricity for air conditioning in nearby Tel Aviv, they cut off the electricity in the Gaza Strip. No building materials are brought in, so that the schools that the Israelis destroyed, in some cases with children in them, cannot be rebuilt.
The vacuous words of the Israeli government and the IDF spokesman, that they have no regard themselves for international humanitarian law, that they place a completely different and much lower value on Palestinian life compared to Israeli life. The actions that they are taking are completely outwith the United Nations Charter and any idea of how a civilized nation ought to behave.
I've known most of the prime ministers of Israel, starting with the founding prime minister, David Ben-Gurion. Golda Meir was my friend. So was Yigal Allon, the deputy prime minister, who as a general won the Negev for Israel in the 1948 War of Independence. The Israeli Foreign Minister, Tzipi Livni, asserts that her government will have no dealings with Hamas because they're terrorists. Tzipi Livni's father was Eitan Livni, Chief Operations Officer of the terrorist Irgun Tzvai Leumi, who organised the blowing up of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, in which 91 victims were killed, including 4 Jews. Israel was born out of Jewish terrorism. Jewish terrorists hanged 2 British sergeants and booby-trapped their corpses. Irgun, together with the terrorist Stern Gang, massacred 254 Palestinians in 1948 in the village of Deir Yassin. Innocent civilians slaughtered by the Israelis in Gaza was the inhabitant of a disabled people's home, which was hit by Israeli targets, and that a hospital was hit as well.
The political relationship with Israel and between Israel and the European Union should now be reconsidered in the light of the Israeli government's disproportionate response.
2009 Operation Cast Lead and saw for ourselves that humanitarian centres by the UN had been hit by Israeli strikes. As a high contracting party to the Geneva Convention, what can Britain do about this? Will he confirm that hitting humanitarian centres is a war crime?
There can be no peace until there is an end to the blockade of Gaza for even the most basic economic materials like building materials, and withdrawal of from the illegal settlements which prevent any possibility of a contiguous state on the West Bank.
A refugee population of 1.7 million imprisoned in a tiny strip of land with the prison guards, which is a supposedly civilised state systematically killing women, children, elderly and disabled people. Hundreds of Palestinian civilians will continue to die, and the annexation of Palestine by Israel will continue.
With half of the population of Gaza aged under 18 locked in an open prison in one of the most densely urban concentrations in the world, there was never any prospect that children would not be the disproportionate victims of this military action. And now we see tens of thousands of homes without electricity and a rapid deterioration of the humanitarian situation.
But for every Israeli killed by Palestinian rockets, 100 Palestinians have been